Hi. In this video, we're going to be covering what emotions are, what their function is, what they do for us, to better enable you, the clinician, to be able to jump in any moment within the therapeutic session, to be able to try and access feelings, because being able to root in and get a hold of feelings and bring them forth is really the primary, most general target of any clinical work you're going to be doing. So what are emotions? It's important to realize that emotions function on two specific levels. The first is, in a more biological sense, emotions organize behavior. Happiness organizes the behavior of curiosity and openness. Fear organizes the behavior of self-preservation, running away or fighting. Anger organizes the behavior of reestablishing what is a status quo mechanism, a sense of something isn't just, something's not right in the world. So feelings are organizing actions. Now, if that's all it was, it'd be pretty simple. We could all be pure behaviorists, put everybody on a positive reinforcement track, and we'd be ready to go. And to be quite honest, in clinical work that can be quite useful, but that's not the only part of the story here. Because what makes people unique as opposed to other living organisms is our ability to be reflective on what we're feeling. So we as people, we actually use our emotions in this more dynamic, complex way, almost as a compass, as a guide, that we ourselves can see who we are and know where we're going. We can choose to act on emotions. We can choose to refrain from acting on emotions and maybe shift into some other behaviors that are more effective in the moment. So in many ways, emotions for people is how we identify ourselves. They're part of our identity and how we create our identity through life. And this is why in many cases with people with personality disorders, say with borderline personality disorder, clients are coming in not really knowing who they are, because the thing that develops identity, emotions, is so erratic that they're never really able to establish any sort of sense of stability, awareness in who they are. They're all over the place. It's too chaotic at the end of the day. So that's the two levels of emotions. Now, within clinical work, it is important to be aware of behavior-based interventions, because that is one aspect of how emotions function, and it's really important not to ignore those. But like I said, the story doesn't end there. And that another part of your work with clients is enabling them to develop an awareness of what feelings are, to be able to label the experiences they're having, to identify them accurately in order to maximize how one engages with them. And this can be pretty tricky because people oftentimes don't realize the things that they're saying about their emotions, the way that they're relating to their emotions, is like skipping that process. It's almost like people are then jumping oftentimes to the thoughts they're having or what they want to do or how they're assessing the environment, but really don't pay much attention to the feelings they're having. So you take a dramatic case. Say a husband yells at his wife, in a very aggressive, vicious sort of way. And you're sitting with the wife and you're trying to understand what that moment was for her, try to bring out the emotions to give her compass. Well, she might say something like, "I think I want to divorce him." She's not focusing on the behavior at all. She's going right to thoughts, and that's easy to catch. But it's when people start saying things like, "I feel like I want to divorce my husband," well, that's not an emotion. Or when someone says, I feel like this isn't working. Okay, well, that's an assessment. That's not an emotion. Researchers have found that there are 6 specific types of emotions that are universal. They have biological markers. They have universal facial expressions. And one is, the only positive one, is happiness, but the rest can be actually quite negative. Because again, like one aspect of feelings is, well, they orient us in the world to help us survive. And well, survival can be a messy business. So the first universal emotion is happiness. The next is surprise. Surprise isn't exactly positive or negative. It shifts to either happiness or one of the other emotions. Disgust, sadness, fear, and anger. Now, it doesn't matter what culture you live in, what part of the world, whether you have YouTube or whether you don't even have a TV. We all have these 6 emotions, and like I said, they all have universal biological markers. Now, there are social emotions, and things like shame, guilt are socially motivated emotions, that they tap into the biological emotions we have and mix and combine those into more abstract emotions. But fundamentally, those are the 6 that are going to be on the table. And as far as the complex social emotions within the room, you're going to be landing oftentimes with things like shame and guilt. So you're trying to bring the client to recognize, to verbalize, to label their experience, what they're feeling, with one of those 6 or one of those social emotions. And when you're able to do that, well, then you can move to the next step of figuring out, well, what does this emotion have to teach you? Because as I said, feelings do have functions, and the person is sensing something, that experience, that's worth listening to. So, say that in this example, a common feeling of how the person is feeling towards the situation, towards her husband, well, it would make sense, anger. And here we can get a little tricky, because a lot of people, I think, hearing this video would say, oh, well, also sadness. And that's true. Like I said, sadness is an emotion. But we have to remember that emotions are in relation to something else. And it's a fair argument to make that sadness as an emotion would be in relationship to the person herself in this case. Feeling sad she doesn't have the relationship that she feels she deserves. That's a loss. That's what sadness teaches. There's a loss going on. You're going to want to pay attention to that. But more importantly, you're going to want to focus on the feeling in relationship to the other people. Because again, as we've talked about in previous videos, a fundamental problem that brings people into therapy isn't just the feelings they're having, it isn't just the suffering that's in their life, but it's in relationship to the people in their life. So it's worth a lot to really press that one and focus a client in on, well, how do you feel towards your husband? A useful emotion in this sort of situation would be anger. There was an injustice that occurred. It's not right that he yelled at her and maybe even hit her. And there's not going to be much movement forward until that emotion is recognized. Because we do have to put on the table something wrong occurred to glean that wisdom from those emotions. And then to go on to the next step and figure out, well, okay, now we know that's what you're feeling. Well, is that an appropriate feeling? And how do you want to behave? Again, tapping into that second level of emotions as being something that we are able to reflect on and choose to do or not do. I hope this video was helpful. If you'd like to shoot me a comment, you can put that in the comment box. I really appreciate, if you liked this video, to go ahead and give it a like and share it with your friends. And you can also check me out on my Patreon account. I'll see you in the next video.